Thinking about your boys' development in this COVID environment, looking for a safe harbor where they can release that constructive energy? Pause, think about it with intentional thought, and consider where we go from here. Stay tuned and listen to Robert A.F. Bartlett's perspective on scouting and the answer in the COVID disruption. Join our co-sponsors, Dom Dev Enterprises and Page Investments, and our friends at Islandese Realty, D1 Development, and Sammy's Chicken. Post your questions, tell us where you're at, what you want to hear us discuss this evening. And by all means, do subscribe, like, follow, and share with all of your friends. And we will be right back to have our discussion.
SumTin to think about with Dale Happy Knowles.
Welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. And what we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative 242. This evening, we have a special guest with us today, a gentleman who has been an icon in my life over the years. He might not know that, but his actions speaks volumes for itself. And so we admired him from a distance, even though we were close, but we never told him. And so maybe he'll get some of that tonight, or he may not. I don't know. But this evening we have Robert A.F. Bartlett, as we mentioned, and he is a giant in the scouting arena. Welcome, Robert.
Good evening, Happy. It's good to be here with you.
Good. Now, what name you want me to call you? Because I know you're from Soldier Road, and so we got all kinds of names of people on Soldier.
Bob, whatever's easy.
Whatever one is easy? Okay,
yep.
Great. We're glad that you are here with us this evening, and we're going to have this discussion on scouting and whether it can be the answer for us in this COVID environment to help persons understand how to still develop their children or provide that wholesome environment to develop their children, which still be kind of safe as much as possible in this COVID environment with all of the good things that is happening out there or what is not being allowed to happen because of COVID and so forth. Right? So when we look at this whole thing, we have to go back to the fundamentals. And I noticed that on your resume, you speak of yourself having a degree in natural sciences. But you actually function in the insurance industry. I don't know if there's a connection between the two things, but I know what you do outside of work, there's a connection in a big way. So how did you make that transition or that connection into the two disciplines?
I guess it's a long story. I initially went into natural sciences, and my thought was to do marine biology.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at Resorts International, and they had an arm in San Francisco, SeaWorld.
Okay.
And in conversations with some of the leaders there, the process was to transition to San Francisco and spend some time at Marine World. But of course, with the change in ownership and everything else, that was not to be.
All right.
And once I finished college, I came home. I had worked with resorts all during my college university time.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I came home, I thought to go into agriculture and fisheries.
Mm-hmm.
And for any number of reasons, that did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
And, I happened to be paying a bill for my folks at J.S. Johnson. And they were hiring at the moment. So I told them what my plans were. And 2 weeks later, they said, look, we didn't think you would take this long to get back to us. So we started a 6-month trial. And the rest is history, 43 years and counting, and I'm still there. It allows me to work with people. The very nature of insurance, with the perils that you're covered for,
right.
I can bring my science background in as necessary. Certainly it's helpful in scouting. So, I was told many years ago that a college degree just shows that you are trainable. So
Exactly, right.
Once you've made that transition, you should be able to adapt to any environment and any job situation.
Yes,
so there we have it.
Yeah, well, I'm a prime example of that, because, even though I did engineering and stayed in engineering for my whole career, but I wanted to highlight that because a lot of folks out there, particularly young people, have a vision in their head as to what they want to do, and then they get in environments, and then they buck up, and they stump their toe, or they can't succeed in what they want to do. And it just shows that, if the good Lord have a way for you, He will pave your way for you, and it might not be what you set out to do, but you'll be doing something, and it's still going to come back to what you love, because you will always find time to do something that you love to do.
That's exactly right.
And we thank you for that.
I found over the years too that there are a lot of persons who, because they intended to study a particular field, and they had to change for whatever reason, either it was not what they were meant to do,
right,
they have actually refused to come back home because their parents and friends had great expectations.
Right.
And they've actually ended up, if you went to study medicine and you wound up doing something different,
yes,
or you want to become a lawyer and that didn't work out, you went into business and accounting. And, I think a lot of pressure is put on young persons by their parents. And, you need to allow folks that freedom, I guess, to make decisions. We are here to guide them.
Right.
But they have to, find their own way in life. And scouting,
right.
I think, is a tool for that kind of thing, you see? So.
Yes. Cool. Well, in the show, we tend to, I don't know what happened. Did I freeze? Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. I don't know. Somewhere in my video just froze, but.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see you and hear you.
Okay. Am I moving? So when we look at your background, and you would have done a number of significant items there. You would gone off to school, as we mentioned. Then you would have become a chartered director certified under the Caribbean Governance Training Institute, which my understanding is a leadership program. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, that came late in my career. There's a course that's constantly being run in the region. And, I actually traveled to Provo to participate in that particular course. And it trains persons in various disciplines, a number of persons from the unions around the region, and also in government have attended this particular course. And it actually trains you and exposes you to all the requirements of being a member of a board, what should happen in the process, what you go through in choosing board members, and making sure you have that right mix so that you end up with a successful product in terms of running a company or an organization. And so that came in, and it's about networking as well, because it also gave me an opportunity to meet with some of the leaders in government organizations around the region who also participated in this course,
Right. And so that would also aid you in a big way. Not that you didn't have pedigree before, but in your endeavors as being a leader in the scouting feel discipline. Would that be correct?
Yes, because, and particularly at this time, a lot of changes are happening around the world of scouting.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a strategic planning, a triennial plan, which we're coming to the end of one now, which was 2017 to 2021.
Right. Okay.
And a part of that is bolstering the governance element of the scouting organizations around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was helpful in that regard, in that we had to put policies in place and set up structures so that we are following best practices in terms of governance, because regardless of where you are, you have to be doing things properly.
Right.
And
Right.
scouting is no different from that.
Right.
And persons who are exposed to the scouting way go on to business and everything else. And so they take those experiences with them. So
Right.
you get, at a very young age, you have that kind of exposure.
Right. Yes. And I mean, the exposure to discipline, we talk about discipline in two ways. Discipline in terms of being able to do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, and also discipline in terms of corrective action. Maybe not in terms of beatings and all that kind of stuff that people think about when we talk about discipline, but at least in terms of keeping people or young boys on the straight and narrow, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you, before we leave, you would be in terms of the Woods Badge Scouters and members of the Scouting Association of the Bahamas, and then you also were the National Training Commissioner and also the former Chief Commissioner. So
Okay.
those are significant
Yeah,
leadership positions, if I
the
remember.
Wood Badge training scheme trains leaders for scouting. You have leaders of young men or young persons now, because we're co-ed in many places around the world. So
Okay.
you have leaders of young persons, then you also have leaders of leaders, and you have leaders of trainers.
Right.
And
Right.
so you have different levels that you would attain. And so there's a basic course that allows you to wear this woggle, which is a Gilwell woggle. It's a leather braided woggle. That is the first thing that you will get. Then you have your scarf after you would have done your basic 2 training. And that then goes on to your Wood Badge bead. All right. And these beads, a trained leader has 2 of them. Then you have a trainer has 3 beads, and a trainer of trainer has 4 beads. These beads are replicas of a necklace that Baden Powell would have gotten from a Zulu warrior. It goes back to our handshake. We shake with the left hand.
Right.
And, in war times, those persons who were right-handed held their shield in the left hand. And so in order for you to shake somebody's hand with your left, you had to actually put down your protection to be able to do that. And so the left hand is a sign of friendship. And this Zulu warrior presented Baden Powell with these beads. And so the leadership beads that we get after our scout training are replicas of those beads. So
awesome. Well, and then finally, you have been awarded, I almost say rewarded, maybe rewarded also, but awarded in so many ways that I can't even list all that I know of. I know you only put a couple on this paper, but your shirt should be overflowing if they were to put them on a shirt, which we know that you don't all do for all of those things. But that tells me that people respect you and what you have been able to accomplish in this arena of scouting and mentorship for young boys and the like. And so we take our hat off. I don't have a hat on, and I don't have no hair to shake on the side to think, but we take it out because we look at you as a young child and watch your mannerisms. And I worked with your dad which you know, and you know the respect I have for him, Robert I.
Yes.
Bartlett, and so forth. And I saw a lot of you, a lot of him, in actually all of your children, and so forth. And so we take our hats off to you guys, right?
Well, he certainly had some big shoes to fill, so I'm nowhere near there. You know, I'm humbled by the observation,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, he taught me a whole lot. And if
Mm-hmm.
I could be half the man that he was, I think I would be walking the right way. You know, but God orders my steps,
Mm-hmm.
and I depend on Him. So, you know, all that I do is I'm a product of the community.
Right,
You
right.
know, and it's a lot of hands and a lot of persons that are involved in bringing me to the point that I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal is to impart some of those experiences, some of that knowledge to the persons that I have the responsibility for in scouting and otherwise, on the job, in scouting, at
Mm-hmm.
church, you know, wherever I can assist. That is what it's all about.
Right, right. Well, you know, the good Lord made us all unique. And so when we talk about filling shoes, we all have our own shoes to fill per His perfect will and purpose for us. So D. McCullen, yes, that's what it said, didn't realize the world history intervened with the scouting traditions. Very cool that the continuity of cultural traditions continue through scouting. You know, I guess that brings up a question because mom is involved in Girl Guides in a big way still. And you seem to see all the time where people don't seem to think that guiding and scouting and the rest are still in existence. You know, but what I see from your the page and pages on Facebook and stuff like that, they're still very active. I mean, during COVID, yes, things slowed down, but how
Yeah, I
far?
think that, you know, all uniform organizations probably have to do a better job in terms of PR.
Okay.
You know, you talk about not blowing your own trumpet,
Mm-hmm.
but if you don't do that, sometimes you don't get the acknowledgement. And, you know, we're all fighting for, just in terms of funding,
Right.
you know, you're all fighting for a diminishing source of revenue. Uh, you know, people have less to give, and there are
Mm-hmm.
more persons picking at that particular pot.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, case in point, you know, in our group, the Soldier Road Boys group, we
Mm-hmm.
had an exchange, and the comment was made about seeing diminishing numbers of uniform groups on parades.
Right. Right.
And you know, while it is good to have large numbers, the numbers don't necessarily show the impact that you're having in the community.
Right.
Because there are more and more. Take it for the National Youth Parade. You know, there was a comment some years ago about the input that you may get is dependent on the show that you have at that particular event
Right.
or at Remembrance Sunday. Because if you don't have a large group, then you don't need as much.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is that because scouting rounds a person off,
Right.
we have scouts. The schools are now participating in those marches. And so if they have to show up for their school to
Yeah,
get credits,
right.
then they're going to wear the school uniform.
Right. Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
there are scouts, guides, brigaders that are in these organizations, GGYA, there are scouts who are part of that program. And so you make choices,
Right.
and it may not look as though, like I said, there is a wide impact, but you
Right.
know, and then we know that there are persons who are using the scout program who are not going by the name of scouts.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But because, you know, we've been around since 1907 in the world and still going strong,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're hoping to hit 100 million scouts by 2023.
Wow.
You know, so that is our vision for
Yes.
scouting.
Mm-hmm.
We have scouting in over 170 countries in the world. There's 6 regions.
Mm-hmm.
We've just come out of a conference where I think 170 or 171 of those countries were present. It was virtual, but we pulled it off, So the digital technology was there to allow folks to join from wherever they were in the world.
Right.
Some were on site, but others came from all around the world.
Yes, and that's one of the things we want to touch on. And so one of the questions we have here is that is Boy Scouting the answer for development in this COVID and disruption, and particularly in this digital arena where most of the young people today are very digitally minded. So how you talked about how you all did it during that period. So is that
Well, I would say yes. We have found in conversation with our counterparts around the world that numbers have dropped significantly because of COVID and the lockdowns and the restrictions that are in place. But there are some countries where the numbers have actually risen because of the scouting program. So a lot of it depends on where you find yourself.
Right.
Here in the Bahamas, there are some groups that have been closed for the duration. There are others who have actually they've used certain platforms to be able to meet with their members, not as regularly as they would like, but by having virtual treasure hunts, scavenger hunts, they're able to create projects and then present them virtually. We make those things happen. And then they're able to chat with their friends while we're in that environment. Now, what we found, because especially with the younger persons at the Cubs, that parents prefer them to meet face to face. And if they need to be supervised and the parents are at work, that's a challenge. You see? And so that is one of the reasons why the numbers are down. But the key is to stay in touch until we get back to some degree of normalcy. Now, we've done a combination of things at the 13th, which is at Holy Cross. And we've had virtual and face-to-face meetings. In recent times, because of the uptick, we've actually stopped the face-to-face. But what you do is you have a sanitization station. We have a temperature check before you enter the group. You sanitize. There are individual packets depending on the particular activity that we're going to have. And then you have wide games where you don't have to have that contact. And so these are the things that we mix up to allow persons to do what it is that they like to do. And that's getting together. Now, the challenge too, we've even had a virtual campfire. We had Scout Week back in March. The church service was virtual. The campfire was virtual. And so persons were able to Zoom in. You had a program set up on, and you just let it run. And you had input. So, we're using technology. There are badges that persons can achieve to get them accustomed to working on the internet, how to search and everything. But nowadays, the youth can probably teach us a thing or two. But you allow them to grow and to help you to make these. But I did a poll just last week, and the desire is to be able to get out there and to hike and to camp and to cook on the 3 rocks and everything else. And so we have to find opportunities to do that. Now, we may not be able to do a whole week of it because of the restrictions. But certainly we can do it overnight, or we can do a hike. And even with jamborees that are coming up where persons go internationally to camp, they've moved to persons using single-man tents. So where you may have had a patrol in a tent, you have single-man tents, so you increase the distancing. But you're still able to experience the outdoors and to have that fun, you see.
Yeah. So if a parent is watching now, and they are looking for this environment wholesome environment where they could let their children, boys, etc. And you mentioned now is unisex. So, how do you describe what is a scout?
Well, a scout is a person, and like I said, we're now, in many places, we are part of the Inter-American region,
Okay.
which covers North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
And in our region, there are associations that actually co-ed. They have like Guides and Scouts of Chile.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have a good relationship with the guides.
Mm-hmm.
And while worldwide, we allow females into scouting. My particular posture is that wherever there is a guide presence,
Mm-hmm.
we won't compete with them, you
Right.
see? So,
Okay.
for instance, at Holy Cross,
Mm-hmm.
we have a very active guide in Brownie Park. So the scouting group there is strictly boys.
Right.
But there are other groupings where you have co-ed. Now,
Right.
wherever there is a co-ed element, you must have female leadership,
Right.
you see?
Mm-hmm.
And, whether you're one gender or, the combination,
Mm-hmm.
child safety is extremely important.
Right.
And
Yes.
so we have a safe from harm policy that governs scouting around the world now.
Mm-hmm.
Even to join a meeting or to attend a conference, you would have had to take a course online, giving you a certification in
Mm-hmm.
safe from harm, both basically and even on the digital platform.
Right.
Because you have cyberbullying and all of these kinds of things that you need to be wary of. And so, so we've upped the ante in terms of what we require from our leaders and volunteer to be able to service the population that we cater to.
Yeah. And so, what do scouts do, and how do they do it?
Well,
So,
if you take the word scouting and you
Mhm.
remove the S and the C, then you have
Okay.
outing. So
okay.
that is where we prefer to be, in the outdoors, enjoying nature.
Mm-hmm.
You have scoutcraft, which involves building gadgets where you're building towers or bridges,
Right.
building campfires, and building rafts. Folks build rafts that they test on the water. All of these things that you can do, and with pioneering, it's the art of building things without using screws and nails and bolts.
Mm-hmm.
You have lumber and you have rope,
Right.
and you're able, and nowadays, you recycling, we are trying to cut down on the use of plastic and everything else. So recycling products. So scouting is about being in the outdoors, observing nature.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we go into an environment, we are expected to leave a smaller footprint as possible,
Okay.
and in many cases to leave it better than we found it. So if we
Then-
go to the beach, we
Mhm.
clean up garbage, even garbage that we haven't put there.
Right.
If we go camping, same thing applies. You don't throw stuff into the environment that is going to take hundreds of years to break down and may contaminate the natural, flora and fauna and the waterways that we have. So, the scouting worldwide, but scouting is I guess probably the premier organization, and it's informal learning, because you have your structured stuff at school and everything else. And while there's some of it in scouting, our process is learning by doing.
Yeah.
So it's hands-on. You have a process and you're allowed to go in and do it. And
Yes.
you do it to the best of it's a progressive scheme as well. So depending on your age, the degree of difficulty increases.
Right.
So you have things like scoutcraft, you learn how to tie knots, you learn how to use a compass and read a map. There are hikes. There's you can get badges for my faith. So you study your faith as well as other faiths because
Right.
we are open to all.
Right.
So
Right.
all creeds, all faiths. Scouting is open to all of them. There's no political agenda. So even in places where countries may be at war, scouts from those
Right.
countries are brothers and sisters. So
Yeah. And do you all find that scouts who stick with it, their whole mannerism and work ethic and grades, for lack of a better, improve because of the system?
yes, the thing is that we have folks, like I said, having to make decisions as to what they are going to do. When I was growing up, we had schoolwork, you had scouts, and it's all about, like you said, managing your time.
Right.
You see, some persons, you get an excuse, they can't come because they're involved in something else. But
Right.
if you balance it, you can do a lot. And then some things are seasonal.
Right. Right.
Because you have somebody who may be involved in baseball or basketball, and when the season is over, they come back to scouting.
Right. Right.
And so the process is that you give them the best experience while they're there so that they will want to come back.
Yeah.
You
Well,
see?
yeah, I'm glad that that's the case because my first experience was a one-day experience, and I went under duress because I wanted to go back to baseball, and my mom said you had to go to scouts. And then myself and whoever was the commander at the time, I guess it was Cubs, would have had some words, and he was treating me in a way that I said that my mom don't treat me. So I jumped on my bike and went home.
Yeah.
Which was, and I never went back because baseball was my focus. But not everybody has that type of focus where they knew what they wanted to do, right? And so scouting is good. Madam Producer, you want to put back Brother Hannah's note so we could launch it? So Hannah says, good work. Several reports reflect that the participation in scouting and guiding helps to lower the risk of mental health illness later in life. And we have been having a challenge with youth in suicide attempts and the like, and so forth. What is the mindset of a lot of the youth who are involved in scouts in terms of, do they become leaders or what's the?
I think we have a cross section. Every organization, every grouping has a cross section of society, and so you're going to find persons with different dispositions. That's our role as leaders to identify those persons who have challenges and to try and help them to work through it. We are social creatures,
right?
And so the restrictions and the distancing of the pandemic really go against our nature.
Right.
And so the folks who are longing to be able to interact with their friends, and that's why even if just a virtual communication, that is important. You try and keep the connection going until such time as you go, because you have and the example you gave about your one day, I'm sure that there are countless others who may have been bullied on their first day.
Right.
And so they chosen not to come back, you see. But there are leaders who are supposed, and this is where the cry for leaders come back.
Right.
Because we have a shortage of leaders across the country with organizations, that is, and committed leaders, because you have some folks who just show up and others who are actually committed to make a difference.
Right.
So the leader has to have a zeal for assisting, whether it's scouting or something else. They have to have a zeal for working with young people. I know when I first came back from university, I was approached about joining the educational system as a teacher.
Okay.
And I didn't think I had the patience for that. but I'm teaching every day.
Mhm.
You see, so it's just that. But that structured environment, I didn't think that I was cut out for that.
Right, right.
But like I said, I find myself teaching every day. Scouting requires you to do some teaching. You're sharing experiences, and we just need persons who would have had exposure, even if they would have had a good experience.
Mm-hmm.
They would need to give back to the organizations,
Right.
even if they give back once a month or once a quarter, in terms of the fact that we are teaching these persons life skills.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a carpenter, a plumber, an electrician, come in and give them a short course. They're badges, handyman badges that you can earn in these disciplines. And some persons may find that it's something that they earn a living from, or that may be their career of choice.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
So the thing is to expose them to as many disciplines as possible, and as many experiences as possible, whether it's here on the island or traveling to a family island or even outside of the country.
Right, so they could
Making
find a
those
way.
events.
Right.
But the fact that all of the things that are happening now, particularly with COVID, to be able to manage properly young persons, we need support. And that goes down to parents. When we grew up in Soldier Road, a lot of persons lived in the area. They could walk to meetings. Mm-hmm. And so we had very strong contingents in the group there. But nowadays, folks have moved away from the old neighborhoods, and so they have to be dropped to meetings. So if your parents or a relative doesn't have transportation,
you say that
show up.
We used to walk from Soldier Road to the baseball diamond at the Kiwi Sports Center.
Yeah.
With our baseball bag and gear, because we wanted to play baseball. And so I'm thinking the same would be for youth today. Whatever they really want to do, they'll find a way to make sure that they get there.
That's exactly right. But the thing is, some of them have too much, I guess, freedom in terms of what it is they want to do. Your choices should be limited to a certain extent until you are turning your own key and earning your own salary.
Some of them believe they turn in the key.
When you get old enough, then you can make some decisions. But young children saying they ain't going to church or they're not going this way and stuff. No, I know we had some brothers who were coming to Scouts. And the agreement with the family was that, okay, you will do Scouts for a certain period of time. And then after that, you can put your focus on basketball or baseball, as the case may be. And so there was a compromise. And life is about making compromises sometimes. And like I said, if you're not exposed to it, you won't know whether you like it or not.
Yeah. But you mentioned that just now, and that reminded me that I mentioned earlier in terms of looking up to you and your brothers and the family and stuff like that, your dad. Because I used to see you all at church, and I used to see how you all used to conduct yourselves and stuff like that. And you all were very similar to my Uncle Georgie in that purposeful, calm, gentle way. It wasn't the rah, because, back then everybody was wanting to be macho. I had boxing gloves. Everybody had boxing gloves. You had to be like Muhammad Ali. But you all were a little different. I wouldn't say soft, but just different, right? In terms of the mannerism and the calmness in which you all operated. And so I always thought that was good. So we see persons chiming in from around the world. You're welcome to ask your questions. We will endeavor to answer them as we can. Hello, Brother Barrett. I saw your post pop up a little while ago. And Cousin Gina, all the way up in Canada. Barrett is in Dominica. My motto type today. Yes. So good to see you there and chiming in. And we hope that scouting is happening in your areas in a big way, and so that we could change this narrative, man. Because when we change the narrative, to me, the world will change. It has to start there, right? All right. So we're coming up onto the break, but before we go to the break, we see here, Madeline again says that with the uniformity of scouting throughout the various countries that participate in it, what aspects would you say are particularly unique to the Bahamian scouting organizations? The food.
Well, what may be unique and which may have worked a little to our detriment is our move, especially for national events when we're having the Remembrance Sunday,
Right.
March, and the like, to be. And that's another thing that would have affected numbers, is if you did not have your full dress uniform, you might not be allowed to participate.
Right, right.
And I think we need to be changing that position. We've talked about it, and I think we're moving in that direction where you allow for some diversity in that regard, you see?
Okay.
Because we have a work uniform, which is very relaxed. There are some persons who are just coming into the organization. They've not made the commitment to become a members yet.
Right.
And so to go to the expense of having a uniform may be a challenge.
So it would be good to have
even with our military organizations, the police and the defense force, when they are out, you see the different dress that they have available to them. And so I think for our parades, that going forward, that may be the key to showing that strength that people feel may be absent, you see.
Yeah.
Certainly in the environments with the schools that we go into, we allow the young persons to wear their school uniforms. The unique part of the uniform which connects scouts all around the world is their scarf.
Right, yeah.
All right? And so whether you are in plain clothes or whatever, if you're wearing a scarf, you're in uniform.
Right, right.
And that you would look around the world, especially some of the impoverished nations and everything else, you see persons who are working, communities, humanitarian crisis, natural disasters, and you see young and older members wearing their scarves. That's scouting in action.
Right. Awesome.
And I think that is what we try to encourage. So like I said, whether you're dressed up or you're dressed down, if you have your scarf on, you're in uniform. And that connects us.
Awesome. Well, as I mentioned, we're going to go to the break now. But when we come back, we're going to dive a little bit into some of the things of impact of scouting and some of the challenges and needs that might be out there. One of them I could see off the top was there could be persons out there who just have money and maybe not a means to do with their money. They can sponsor a child so they can have the uniform. Because I could tell you, when playing baseball, there wasn't a time when you ever wanted to be on the field without your full uniform. And because that just made you feel like you, even if you weren't as good a player as some of the other players, the fact that you were dressed in uniform said something, because it said that you were good enough to be a part of that team. And that raised the lid in a big way. People's confidence went out the window, at least my own did, right?
That is exactly right.
Great. So you've been listening to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. We're here with Robert A.F. Bartlett. I don't know if he used the Bartlett or the Bartlett, because it's kind of Robbie, all kind of different things. But we're discussing how scouting can be the answer in this COVID disruption that we've had. So we'll be right back after these messages.
Sammy's Chicken. There's nothing like it. This is Coach Knowles, founder and head coach at 242 Elite. I just wanted to talk to you guys about our first trip in program history to Orlando, Florida. On this trip, we went, like I said, to Orlando, Florida from July 1st to August 3rd. We played in 5 tournaments. We had at least 5 or 6 scrimmages. Came out with at least 25 games for the month. On top of that, the guys had workouts with prep school coaches. They had a few college coaches watch them, and 5 out of 9 of our guys have interest from prep schools and college programs thus far from the trip. I think it was a great experience for the guys. It was a great experience for myself. I was very proud of our guys. We had guys who were underage playing. We had some guys that even had their first time playing basketball, organized basketball this year. We came up with 2 second place and 1 first place. I think we did, again, pretty well. We hope to see the program strive. We're hoping to find a permanent sponsor to make this a regular thing and to keep it going and keep helping our youth get better opportunities and follow their dreams. We want to say thank you to all our sponsors, everybody that donated, and we couldn't have done it without y'all. So again, thank you, and we hope to see you guys again soon when we go off, hopefully in December.
Welcome back to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. We're here this evening speaking with Robbie Bartlett, talking about scouting and whether it's the answer in this COVID disruption. And so far, we've seen that there's a lot of positive and constructive means by which persons can learn in the scouting arena and the production over all of the multiple thousand years that they've been in existence. I don't know if we started from when we were in the caves or how far back we go, Brother Robbie.
Well, it's interesting, because scouting, the organization that you have today, the history tells that scouts started with gangs of young men roaming the English countryside, because Baden-Powell had written a book, Scouting for Boys.
Right.
And in it, he had tracking skills, pioneering skills, survival skills.
Right.
And so they were just doing what young boys did. So the leaders came later on to try and be that guiding force to direct that untapped energy, so that the young men and girls nowadays will become contributing citizens in their particular communities, countries, and in the world. And we find that with scouting, you have persons, and the thrust nowadays is to get more persons under the age of 30 in leadership positions, because at age 18, you can actually start your charge for leadership
Okay.
in the scouting organization. And while it happens, you have a few bright lights that strive to be there. There is a conscious effort to get more persons
Right.
to be in that lane. We've had some of our young leaders go off to training in the region, where they are given additional leadership skills to allow them to bring back. And that's, I guess, with any organization, that is a part of the challenge, that when
Right.
you give someone an opportunity to expose and to grow, you hope that they will come and give back.
Right.
You
Right.
know, far too often, the folks just keep going.
Yeah.
And so our call is for people to give back, you know, and it's all about networking, because if you have a group of persons who decided that they're going to sponsor a particular group, whether it's uniforms or even transportation, because
Right.
some of the activities, there are some persons who may not have seen the eastern or the western part of the island.
Right.
And, you know, you may want to take them on a bus and just give them a tour, you know. Another time there would be a hike. You know, we've had outings where we've hiked from our headquarters over the bridge to Paradise Island and to swim at Cabbage Beach.
Right.
But along the way, there are some sites that they're able to see. And along the trail, you're observing what you see in terms of signs and buildings and those kinds of things. We've even had a tour of the forts. So there's a lot.
Right.
So while you're outdoors, you're getting exercise, you're socializing with your peers, but you're also learning about the history. So we started at Montague Beach. Well, actually, we started in Fox Hill area, Black Bear Tower, Tower Estates.
Okay. Yeah, I know
So
that area.
we did Black Bear Tower. We went to Montague Beach. Then there is an old ramp on Potterski Dock. So we visited the ramp there. You see? You see one or two cannons are still in there.
Okay.
Then you travel on the 66 steps and you go up to Fort Fitzgerald.
Right.
And you see, and then Fort Charlotte. So those are just some of the places that you go. We've lost a few points because some of the challenges I did, we used to have an old cannon right at the top of East Hill Street and Parliament Street, right on the curb there.
Yeah.
Somebody has removed that. I don't know where it is, you know, but that would have been an ideal talking point for tourists who are coming through, going around.
Right.
There was also a cannon at Elizabeth Avenue and Bay Street. That has been removed from the curb. It was stuck right in the curb there. It was standing upright. So that's probably why you
probably
pay a
didn't
lot of
recognize.
attention.
Yeah.
But that has been removed. You know, so these things, persons are not being able to experience it because we're removing history. If you go to Fort Charlotte, the ramp just above where the bandstand is, where BC has all of their electrical connections, that is the old Scout headquarters.
Okay,
which
so
is just up from the guide headquarters down the street.
Yeah,
and if you go there, the wrought iron gate still has the fleur-de-lis on it, which is a symbol for scouting.
Right. Yeah.
So you know, a lot of folks don't know that is where we used to meet for our meetings, general meetings for the association.
Right.
Because of the limestone nature and the damp environment, we were losing a lot of fires and everything else. So once the government made it available for us to get property in Dolphin Drive, we moved the headquarters there. But that's a part of our history.
Wow. Yeah, and so you touch on some of the challenges there. So I would think that scouting would be great if it can also expand or extend into the Family Islands, because there's a lot of history and culture and nature in the Family Islands that persons would be able to benefit from, particularly some of the sailing and fishing type activities.
And I've been thinking a lot about that this week as well. We have active groups in Grand Bahama. And the only other island at the moment is Cat Island. There's a group in Cat Island.
Okay.
That we have. But we've had groups in Eleuthera, Long Island, Abaco. And as the leadership gets on, one of our challenges has been having educators as leaders.
Right. And they move.
Because they will go and they start a group if scouting is their love. But then when they are reassigned, there's nobody there to take up the mantle.
Yeah, that happens a lot in many things.
We've even had subvention given to persons like coaches and persons who would work with scouting, and you would train them, but they sit back and they let you do all of the work. And when you move off, the group just falls apart, you see? So those are the challenges that we have. We are short on leadership, but we are quite happy if a community has leaders, and there are a number of folks who are reading in the beings now, pre-COVID, that want to get scouting up and going in their communities. But we've had some challenges, but we're going to work with them. So there are the preschools, primary schools, and high schools that have, in the old days, schools, St. John's, Government High, St. Anne's, were very, very strong scouting institutions, not so much today. I think one of the remedies for the dilemma that we have in terms of gathering youth groups is if you have scouting in that is community-based, the persons live and work there.
Right.
The chances of the continuity and the strength is going to be greater than folks who have to make travel a great distance to get the meeting, and particularly with the traffic that we have on the road today, you spend half your time on the road, you see?
Right.
So one of my thoughts in terms of how we can, conquer the challenges is to get more communities involved.
Right. That
And,
sounds wise.
Yeah, and then in terms of building too is having a backyard gardening program. Each community, we have the urban renewal set up in communities, and if each park had a plot where you can grow vegetables and that kind of stuff, that everybody in the community had a hand in and had access to it. I heard a program this evening, but before we started, they were talking about sustainability and sovereignty of the food supply, being the way, because with the shortage of food in the areas that we go to order stuff, and then here we need to learn how to feed ourselves.
Right, and we could learn all that through scouting also.
Yes,
as a part of
definitely.
the program.
Yes.
Yeah, so folks out there, that scouting can be I don't want to say a panacea, but it can provide a platform and a foundation for your youth in order to come have the base so that they can rise to higher heights when they get into higher learning and other functions. I mean, it's similar to baseball and other sporting structured systems.
I think in any number of countries too, you have persons who would have gone through the scouting program, particularly if they stayed the course and put in time. Their opportunities for jobs and other things tend to be a little higher, because persons who would have come through the program know what they have been exposed to.
Yeah, and that's an advantage.
So you will have an opportunity, and the unfortunate thing is that you have a gift there waiting for you, and it's up to you to either take advantage or to squander it.
Right, and what I was going to say is, then the advantage of scouting over, say, a baseball, in there, not that you want to compete with any specific thing, is that baseball, there's only so many positions in the professional arena where you have all these people fighting for this one, whereas in scouting, you are open to the whole world of opportunities to touch into thereafter. And so H. Hall says here that do Scout leaders receive stipends or is leadership 100% voluntary?
It's 100% voluntary. You have around the world, there are paid professionals in scouting, but a part of their mandate is that they need to raise their own salaries.
Right.
You know, in other areas, there is the paid professional. Their salary is they may be on secondment from the government. And so that way, because we have limited sources of revenue, and so having a paid professional is really not something that we can afford. We do have access though to paid professionals from the world body who will come down and do training and expose us to other things. But here on the isle, here in the country, it's all voluntary.
Right.
Only we have an administrator at the office. And an assistant there who's the grounds, the training commissioner who was there, servicing a couple of roles. But other than that, all of the leaders in the groups are volunteers.
Right.
And that's the other thing, is that with the demands from businesses, one way businesses can contribute is if they don't have the funding, they can make so many hours a week available to their staff members who are willing to volunteer for youth organizations.
Right.
That's one way of helping without actually having to go into your pocket. Yes, it affects productivity to a certain extent, but I think by allowing these persons to serve the community, you would be doing a world of good. And so I encourage that.
But you might say it affects productivity, meaning on the job. But I look at, say, a BTC or Batalco when your dad was there, and we had the Junior Achievers and all these other programs, and the staff was eager to go and assist in those programs, and that was sort of voluntary. But I mean, maybe they were still on the company's time. But when they came back, they performed even more because they were energized with the diversity of things. So it's not necessarily just a negative perspective. We like to look at things and just think negative first, but it doesn't have to be that way. So tell me, Robbie, is there any examples that you could share without getting into confidentiality issues and stuff like that, of persons who would have gone through the scouting system of which the working arena would have either scouted them, for lack of a pun intended, to come and work for them, or the likes, because of their skills that they developed from scouting, people recognized them and then got them to do something in specific, whether it's work-wise or it was in some civic work.
It is a kind of a catchy thing there, but I know that, and not calling any names, but I know that there are cases where persons have taken on former scouts and even young scouts to work in, because, like I said, they, a scout is honest and a scout is to be trusted.
Right.
And so if you govern your life by those principles, then that is critical for any employee to want to have you on their team. The other side of the coin, too, is that persons who are leaders, either on the executive level or the uniform branch, would have worked with some of these young people on projects, on camps, and so they can observe firsthand the professionalism and their attitude towards any task that they are assigned. And so when they're, so from time to time, we may reach out to somebody and say, oh, somebody needs a job. Do you have an opening, kind of thing? And once the individual gets there, then it's wide open, and we want to take credit for a whole lot of things, because if you're exposed at an early age, then scouting would have played a part in your development. And I know the former Governor General A.D. Hanna always, he was one who would brag about the not study, learn, and scouting. And he was a man of the sea. He loved boating. He loved fishing, and things that you would need to secure your boat or to tie your fish line. He used some of the things that he learned in scouting to do that.
Yeah.
The Derwin Knowles, who was an excellent benefactor of scouting, also had experience in the ranks, and he was a philanthropist. And persons who would have reached out to him, he was happy to assist them in that regard. So you have, so I mean, in leadership all across,
right.
You have persons who have attained, gone up to the ranks of members of parliament, learned attorneys, accountants, persons who have their own businesses, have all been exposed to scouting in one level or the other. The international exposure, I think, also helps. You have an opportunity to travel,
right?
You see, to international events, and then you're able to see the views of your counterparts across the world. So scouting makes for lifelong friendships.
Yeah.
And I know any number of people in industries. There are some people who are working in industries where the persons who brought them on because of their scouting acumen and exposure are no longer there, but they continue to be there. They're dependable, they're honest, and they give you a fair day's work for a fair day's pay.
Right. So would you say it's safe to say that scouting helps bring out the creativity in the individual?
Yes.
Help them learn who they are?
Yeah, because you have, there are projects that you are assigned, and we have a patrol system. And so folks are assigned to various patrols. They bond as a unit, and then there are competitions between those patrols. So they are given projects where they have to perform certain tasks, or they may have to go on a hike and find a particular item that has been logged. And by using the skills, they would go out and do that. So problem solving is even with puzzles and construction games now, they're team efforts. So you can have their individual projects and then their team projects that you have to work on together to be able to achieve it. Simple thing is you have some poles, some rope, and you have another rope that is tied on a taut line, and that's electrified. And so your challenge is to get all of your people over the next side without losing any of them. So you have to find ingenious ways of making that happen.
Yeah, that takes trust.
Another thing, part of the leader training, right? You had to boil a pot of tea in the air. So there are a number of ways you could do that. You could actually go up in a tree and do it, or you can hoist the pot off the ground and just hang it over the fire. So there's no, in many cases, there's no one solution to a problem.
Right.
But the creativity of the individuals working together is what makes it fun, and even today, folks remember those outings that they would have had. I know a particular training course as a young scout. We were called the Rat Patrol, and we were the Gophers. So we have the quartermaster. We took supplies to various places, and these were where leaders were getting their wood badge training. It was held right at Holy Cross, and so we were exposed to a lot of the up-and-coming leaders of the association and the elder statesmen who were there.
Right.
And that particular experience, you couldn't put a price on that.
Right.
And today, some folks remember that particular experience. They remember who their tent mate was on a particular camp. So, and like I say, so they're lifetime friendships, and the discussions and the things that you get into. You mentioned earlier about seeing us and seeing us circumspect, but we were mischievous as well. We were boys, and so we got into trouble. But because of our scout upbringing, we knew how to manage those things. You see, and not everybody can avoid jail. There are persons who may have gone through the program who would have gone astray, but they certainly know where to come back to. You know, if you have a second chance. And then there are other persons who, just by fortune, didn't get caught, but they may have been more troublesome than the ones who actually caught. But all in all of that comes to make you who you are. And if but for the grace of God, we could be in some of those type situations, and we want to have the conversations with the youth in our charge so that they don't make some of the mistakes that we may have made in the past. You don't have to buck your toe to know that it hurts. But there's some individuals who the only way they are going to avoid that situation is they gotta bug the toe. Others will take your advice and they will do something different, you see.
But like I said at the beginning, everybody is here on a unique. God made us all unique, so that's part of the uniqueness, and so forth. So I roll here says that ask the question: what is your association, the Scouting Association's major fundraising activity? How do you get funded?
At the moment, we have, in terms of fundraising, we have benefactors in Rotarians. Right? The Rotary Club of East Nassau has been very instrumental in working, and one of our vice presidents, who was in charge of fundraising, Donald Tomlinson. So the golf tournament that is there. Is a major source of funding for us. And of course, in COVID environment, that didn't take place. But the way scouting is able to contribute is that we are at the various holes. So we will, work at the area of the Rotarians do most of the registration and everything else. But scouts, along with Rotarians, are actually at each hole. And we look out for the hole-in-ones, see whether a ball is fair or not. So by being present, we're helping to earn our keep, so to speak. We're also looking at other ways. There are a couple of things on tap where we can raise funds. But being a nonprofit organization, we are going to be going into dialogue so that we're not jeopardizing that position based on what it is that we want to do as a venture.
But you welcome donations.
In the old days, scouts, they had this thing called barber job, right? But you found that persons were taking advantage of them. They will work you to death and give you little or nothing as a means for it. In other areas, they can do painting jobs and those kinds of things. But that is more for the particular group when they work in their community to help, or they have cookouts. Most of the fundraising are car washes and cookouts, those kinds of things. The days of walkathons are out of it. From time to time, we may have a raffle. But, so we're trying to find new and innovative ways of raising revenue. The backyard farming venture is a means to do just that, you see, because apart from feeding ourselves, the extra produce, and tonight, again, we heard folks saying that whatever you plant, do more than you can eat so that there is something for somebody else. And in the old days, there was the barter system. I had some fish, you had some produce. We exchanged and everybody had a good meal. So, by assisting our community, hopefully members of the community would feel led to give to scouting. We have a problem with crime. and you will sit back and you wonder why there's crime. But if you would put an effort either physically or monetarily to help with programs like scouting, the persons will be too busy to be involved in crime. So, some folks want to do nothing and they still want beautiful results. It doesn't work that way. So we would encourage folks to sponsor, the parent program as well. With any particular group is a major factor, because the leaders are there to take the young persons through the program, get them to the progress and the proficiency scheme where they can earn badges for skill sets that they may have. We have a young man who traveled to, I think, Mexico a couple of months ago with a sailing club. Sailing is his love.
Right.
He is a scout. He can get a badge, just having. So you work with organizations. We can work with baseball. So yes, baseball is your love. But if you are doing some scouting principles, then the sportsman's badge you can get for being involved in baseball. So, these are things where we can work together to achieve that particular goal. And that sometimes is a feeder program for us, because, baseball deals with certain skills. And I know one of our leaders is very, very active in that arena, where he is also teaching the young men those additional skill sets, because having the physical prowess is one thing, but the good graces and proper manners and the business acumen, some of those things don't come naturally. You have to be taught, you see. So it's a combination of those things.
Right. So when we look at the whole big picture now, the scouting platform is ginormous, for lack of better word. You're all over the world, and it's structured, and it's almost like McDonald's. You could almost find the same thing in every place. The principles of it, there might be a different flavor slightly for what happens in the Bahamas, because we're archipelago and so forth and so forth. But, when we look at this whole picture, then it sounds to me that scouting is something that our society should want to embrace and uplift again, particularly in this environment that we are, where we have a lot of idle hands, particularly of the youth. And so then they get into mischievous things, because I know when I was idle, you get into mischievous things and so forth. So the question I would ask on here is then, what adjustments need to happen in order to get more support from society? What would you like to see happen?
One thing, we need to make sure that the program is attractive. That is important, because while it's not all about building fires and tying knots and everything else, that is an integral part of scouting, which will never go away. But we have to balance that with all the things that are happening otherwise, the innovation in terms of technology, exposing folks to, a simple thing as going out dining for a while. You're exposed to the proper way of how to use a fork and knife and those kinds of things. Just keeping yourself clean. There was a saying going back over the years that you can tell the character of a man by how his shoes look. You know? So you could be tattered and worn, but your shoes are well polished and brushed up. So even that skill, we teach the persons how to shine a pair of shoes, but you find folks today, the fad is, as the more beat up the shoe is, that is the classical thing. But you still see some persons who take pride in their footwear, you know, and so with scouting, you were supposed to carry yourself in such a way that the persons can see that there's something different about you. You see, you can hang with certain folks, but you don't have to act like them.
Right.
There was a comment I listened to an ordination. There was an ordination last night of someone who came up through scouting.
Okay.
You see? Deacon Cameron Saunders.
Yeah.
And his father Saunders, was also a scout. So he's been exposed to the scout program. You know, we have, like I said, throughout the archipelago in all elements, law enforcement, business community, there are scouts and persons who have worked with scouts. And the thing is for them to, you know, like I said, give back.
Right.
You know, but like I said, we also, earlier I stated that we also have to do a better job of promoting what it is that we do.
Right. Yeah.
You know, by getting out there on the street and making it happen, you see?
Yeah. And how it benefits the youth in particular.
Yeah,
so
that PR is critical.
Yeah. Awesome. So as we wrap up now, then I would ask this question in terms of all of the needs that we get involved in the campaign. Who needs to get involved in the campaign, and then how do they need to get involved, or how do they get involved in the program of scouting? If somebody wanted to.
All right, everybody needs to get involved. From the legislators at the top, I know that there's a plan now for the National Youth Engagement Plan in terms of having national service.
Okay.
Scouting and other youth organizations need to be in that menu in terms of avenues that you can deploy your services.
Right.
To be able to fulfill your requirement for that. You know, that is going to be critical. You know, having a place where we can camp safely is important as well. You know, you may, well, you did one day, so you may not, but you would have been aware. There's a campsite at Adelaide.
Yes.
And we have had a number of setbacks there. We had a fire which took, because we had a
cabana
camp house that was there that was destroyed by fire. And every effort that we have done with Kiwanis, with Rotary, to try and redevelop is being knocked down. And by knocked down, I mean they stole the water meter.
No.
Stole the electrical meter. We had steel doors. They took the doors off of the hinges. In the bathroom blocks, they went so far as to tear the fixtures out of the walls.
Wow.
So those are the kinds of challenges that we have in just maintaining a safe environment.
Right.
When we go camping now, if we go camping out there, we need to let the police know that we're going to be there. And they would visit the campsite from time to time. But if we leave our tents unattended to go on a hike or to go to the beach, somebody would have gone and ransacked the tents. Wow. And so someone must always be left behind to be on guard. And so this is why we need persons who are willing to volunteer, even if you are only going to be available for an outing.
Right.
That's a great help. You know, because, you know, you can't have one leader with 20, 30 kids and they're going to keep order and keep them safe.
Right.
And so partnering with the community in that regard. But like I said, the new policies may bring some further hindrances because the safe from harm policy requires that you be certified that you know what is required, you know what is not allowed in terms of interacting with the youth, the porn, the sexual advancements,
Right.
The cyberbullying or just bullying, those kinds of things.
Right.
We can't tolerate that any further. We would have seen in the United States and in other places all of the lawsuits that have sent organizations bankrupt, and it only takes one to give the whole organization a black eye. So like I said, we need legislation to include us in the process so that as persons who are fulfilling their obligations to national service, scouting will be an option. Because we have scouts in Defense Force, prison, police force, all across. So, and while we need to up the ante in terms of discipline as well, some parents will tell you you can't discipline their child,
right.
Or they say, well, we know that the whipping is kind of gone out of the way, but a swift tap with a stick in the old days or a piece of rope would put you in shape real quickly, But nowadays, you have to try and talk to them. And some folks, you have in the US and Canada, places like that, these supposedly advanced nations where children are divorcing their parents because they don't want to rule. And so that we have to find a balance. Between discipline and following instructions, that kind of thing, and that's the mandate that is put on leaders, and there are some persons who are not prepared to put that kind of time in to save a life or change a life. And so we would just pray that more persons are willing to step in at that level. We get support, but of course it can always be more.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's good.
But like I say, at every level. So you're talking about leaders in government, talking about church leaders, parents in the home. Parents, we need their support, because like I said, if the person is too young to drive and too small to traverse the streets, then we depend on the parents to get them there. And if work and other obligations prevents that from happening, then the persons who can benefit from the program may not be able to take advantage of it. Even you talked about walking from Soldier Road to the park, and persons say, well, there's more traffic today and all of this kind of stuff. But my position is that each generation is going to have to be able to navigate the community that they grow up in.
Right.
So if the crime is up there, then they're going to need to be savvy as to what to do to avoid being a victim of crime and everything else, walking in groups and all those kinds of things, knowing who, that's a part of the training too. You need to know who to call depending on what the situation is. There a fire? We had a situation, and this is only one of a number, where there was a fire. A young man's mother, I think, was cooking, and she caught a fire. And he knew how to wrap her in a blanket and to put that fire out, you see. And so the results could have been a lot worse had he not had that exposure coming up with the Scout program. So
Right. Awesome. But I see Yvette, your sister, my good friend, and they is sending you some shout outs, some sisterly love.
Hello. Yes.
We welcome you, Yvette, to the show. And also, she reads, Capron is saying, bravo, Mr. Bartlett.
Yes,
wow, I
didn't
call you that one today, Mr.
A part of the conference that we attended recently. So,
okay.
She is a leader at First Bahamas, and Yvette and my other siblings are always supported. We try and support each other in everything that we do. So, That's really the only way we know.
Yes, yes. And then, like I said earlier, that's one of the things that people look up to you, your family, on, is how we all do support each other and operate as a whole. And so it's been real. I mean, we could go on another hour or so or whatever, just talking about these things, because I know what baseball has done for me and being able to go into the structured system of baseball. So I could only imagine that scouting is going to do the same for youth, providing that structure, that zone where persons can go and learn and learn how to be a man, for all of better points than anything else, who they are and so forth. And so we like to thank you, Robbie, for being along with the show. But before we wrap up, what we would like to ask you, is there anything that you would like to share specifically from you? I mean, I asked you a lot of questions, but I mean, if it's anything specifically you would like to say to the youth out there.
Well, I want to give a shout out to family and friends who have tuned into the show, and particularly to Soldier Road Boys. Many of them I would have gone through the scout program with at Holy Cross.
Right.
Some of us would have been in scouting before Holy Cross, but certainly with the 13 Bahamas, there were new friendships that have lasted even to the day. That's over 50 odd years, and we're still going strong, and these men are movers and shakers in the community, and they have contributed and continue to contribute in cash and kind to scouting.
Right.
But I want to encourage the young persons who are looking for something to do to find out Scout headquarters. The numbers there are 9 to 12 nowadays with the COVID. All right, daily, 325-2757 is the number you can call Scout headquarters. The website, all of the information is there as well. Scouts, that's SCOUTS Bahamas.org. You can see some of our governance policies in terms of safe from harm, the diversity and inclusion. That's a big thing in scouting as well. Sustainability, nature, and the environment, protection of the environment. So I want to encourage persons who are not a part of scouting to find the nearest group to your home or to your school and ask about it. And what is interesting is that sometimes the youth determine where an organization is going to go, because you have leaders, but if you don't have young persons in your program, you really don't have anything to do. And so what may need to happen is those young persons who are challenged for things to do and exciting things and who are bored in these times may need to reach out to the persons in their respective communities, their churches, their schools, and lobby for an arm of scouting to be introduced to that particular area. That's one way. And then those persons who know the benefits of scouting and what it has to offer also lobby with your leadership, wherever you are, to start a group or to sponsor a group. As you said, we have a group in the 7th Bahamas, which they actually would provide uniforms, and I think they would launder the uniforms every week, so that they are available for folks coming in. 12 Bahamas, which is a very strong grouping in Fox Hill, they are community-based.
Okay.
And so the folks that live and work in the community, so they are one of the strongest, groupings in the association today in terms of numbers. Communities working together, church groups, and it's just making the resources available, because many of the leaders go into their own pockets every day, every week to fund the program, because their budgets are limited, but that's what it's all about. And if you have the support of your parents, then you can be about the business of leading, and the parents would take charge with the fundraising antics so that they're able to travel and camp and do the things that scouts love to do.
Right. Yes, thank you for that. And I'm sure that there's a lot of persons out there who like to donate monies and the like, but looking for constructive systems of integrity. And I'm sure Scouting in the Bahamas is one of those that they can reach out to.
It's scoutsbahamas.org, happy.org.
Scoutbahamas.org? Oh, .org. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll correct that real quick.
You will be able to see the governing policies that we have instituted. And so people in various professions, we may need to have the books audited, because that particular thing, having an audit of your finances is required by the world body. But if revenue is limited or nothing, then we need some folks to give some pro bono aid to Scouting in that regard. It's as simple as that,
Yes, very much so.
There's so much that can be done, and if everybody does a little bit, what they say, many hands make light work.
Yes. Very much so.
If we support Scouting, then the job becomes easier. The community is enriched by it, and the world, by extension, is enriched by it. So.
Yeah, but we were talking so much till I forget to even put up the couple of pictures we had. So, my producer, I don't know if you have them still handy. We could just shoot them up so people could see some of the things that we do. One of the pictures that you had there, I'm still bewildered as to how they do that with the blindfold. But anyway.
Well, that's it. You see, because that's another thing, is that you expose persons that there are groups that have persons who are less able as members, and you can have an arm where the entire group is less able, but the inclusion and diversion comes when you can integrate persons into an able group, so that they're sensitized to the needs of those persons who may have physical or mental challenges, and get them to respect them for where they are. You see, that's an important element of Scouting. You have your respect for yourself and for others. That is critical. So.
Yeah. So.
But if you practice often enough, you don't need to see to be able to tie a knot or to build scaffold, everything else. It just comes a second nature.
Yeah.
Same thing as if you're out camping and you reach your destination very late at night. If you don't have a flashlight, then you need to be able to do these things in the dark. So.
Right. No, this is the video, I think.
And in this particular video, what the participants needed to do was they needed to feel the knot. And then tie it or see what knot it is, just by the feel of how it's constructed.
Yeah, we gotta play that one again because it was jumping.
And we looped them through some obstacles, so that they had to climb over trees or crawl under branches to be able to follow that trail.
Yeah. Well, we'll put it up on the Facebook page, because I don't know why it's playing the way it's playing. At least to me, it's not coming up fluent.
Yeah, it is kind of choppy.
Yeah, but it played well earlier, but I don't know why it's doing that. I'm not producing. I'm just sure to.
And then I will send you some more shots for the Facebook page too, so you can see some of the grouping from way back when. We have a picture with former Prime Minister Sir Lyndon in the group there, and a lot of the persons who are members of the Soldier Road Boys group are in that photograph. Young and old alike. So.
Yeah, well, like I said,
because the group, our group started in 1966, late 1966, and we've been going ever since. So.
66.
Yeah.
I was 3 then.
Ah.
Mhm.
So, persons like Calliope Thompson Longley, who was my cub mistress and a woodbine scouter in my younger days. And then persons like John Turner, Freddie Higgs, Swithin Burrows, who was the group leader
Yeah.
for quite a while, John Philpott, Alex Gibson, who are still active today. All of those, Maceo Coakley, the late Maceo Coakley,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
late George David Roberts, who ran the group at St. Anne's.
Okay.
All of those persons, Maitland Cates, who was in Grand Bahama,
Right.
all of those persons were senior scouts and leaders in my coming up, My first camp was in 1966. We had a jamboree in Eleuthera, a Bahamas jamboree. And that really, I think that really reinforced my love for scouting.
Right.
Being there on the island and hiking, the Cubs were actually relegated to watch a movie at midnight. But at midnight, we left the campgrounds in Governor's Harbor.
Okay.
And we had to hike to Gregory Town on the road by moonlight. And we went into the caves there, we had torches. We went in the caves, we were able to drink some of that fresh water that's percolating through the limestone. We had fresh pineapples and ice cream because the Hatchet Bay factory was up and running then. They supplied us with ice cream, milk, chicken,
So,
it was
what did I do in here? What do you?
They are tying knots.
Oh, knots. Okay.
I was showing them how to, and this particular thing, I think we introduced them to macrame.
Yeah, I was looking on the floor there. It looks like.
Yeah, so I was showing them how to make a leaf by tying series of strings together, different colors, and then trimming them up. But there are certain basic knots that they needed to learn, you see. So
right.
That was a part of it there. And this is actually the Cub section.
Right.
Yeah. And like I said, we've had face-to-face where we said, this here is on the field at Holy Cross. These are Kildare eggs. These birds lay their eggs in the open field on the stones and they're speckled. So, you really have to look out for them. And so we took the guys over there so that they know. And this particular bird has a broken wing kind of action that it gives. It gives you a shrill cry, and it hops around with one wing extended, trying to draw you away from the nest, you see. But I was able to show the young Cubs and the Scouts exactly what the Kildare does in terms of its nesting and how it tries to protect its young. Because this, like I say, is in an open field. But if you know where it is, then when you having your activities, because we have track on the field as well, and the folks know to avoid these things, So those are the kinds of things that we expose them to. Take them to the beach and look at the marine life. All of it, And right now we are developing, this particular lizard is actually changing his skin, So things like that we'll take photos of, and we'll challenge them to go outside and take some photos and tell us what they're all about. So
awesome. Yeah, so they really could get a whole geography, history, math, science program all together from being
and now with the backyard farming project that we want to get underway, we've already constructed compost bins so that we can make our own compost. And getting ready for this planting now, the fall planting, so that we can have some produce in early spring, or later on this year. So that's it. But we'll be feeding ourselves and sharing with those who need, because in difficult times, even if you could just get a pot of water and put some bananas or plantain and some pumpkin and sweet potato in it, has a belly full and it's nutritious.
Yep.
And so we just need to teach our people that, they are simple. These are the things that our ancestors lived on before all of the
McDonald's.
fancy stuff coming
Yeah.
in. You use the provisions to survive, and you kept, even it's biblical. You kept some of your seed stock for the next harvest. So some you consume, and then some you use to plant, do the next planting. And we want to expose the kids to that kind of thing. Also, being able to air layer and graft trees so that you can have an earlier harvest rather than waiting 3 or 4 or 5
Right.
years for a plant to come to maturity. You can have it in 1 or 2 years.
Yes, that'd be awesome. So maybe I don't know if the backyard farming project or some other project and the like. Maybe you can come back and we could just focus on that specific.
Okay, yeah, that and like
later
in that
date.
regard, folks that asked about how they can assist persons who have access to fill. We welcome some fill, or if you have a mulching plant and you have some mulch that you can drop off at Scout headquarters, that would be helpful. And then we need to talk to the authorities about being able to harvest some seaweed.
Right.
Because those trace elements and nutrients that come from the composting seaweed are also important for the gardening. So that way we don't have to spend money on chemical fertilizers and the like. We can make our own.
Right. Cool.
I see a note from Mom.
Yeah. Robbie, you have done a yeoman's job in scouting. Congratulations and keep flying. Yes, and Yvette also added some more love towards you, which she thank you for about. Oh,
yes, yeah, because she was important for the guides at Holy Cross. Working with the guides and rangers there. Her and Beryl Higgs were important in my sister's development, coming up as brownies and guides and rangers.
Yes.
So
yes.
it takes a village.
Yes, and we'll post that statement on the page too, because there's an addition to the takes the village and the village and the child and all that kind of stuff. But Robbie, it's going on 2 hours now, and so
the time flies when you're having fun. I initially thought, can I make an hour?
Yeah, a lot of people be like that, and then when they get rolling, then they don't seem to wanna. There's so much to offer. That's the thing, because when we're talking about things that could benefit and help people, and once you're talking about productive stuff, people can just continue to talk, right? Because there's so much.
I see Lauren has put a comment as well. There are times when we will have a father and son camp as well.
Okay.
When you have, either, an adult, if not a father, a guardian that will come out, an uncle or an older cousin who will come out and camp with the young persons, because sometimes that may be the only way that they're going to come on out there.
Right. Yeah.
And in this COVID environment too, one way of doing it, you can't get out as a group, so you set up your tent in your backyard and you send a picture in to show that, look, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And then that becomes a talking point as well. So
well, maybe the soldier boys who are scouts could lead the way.
Some folks have expressed an interest in that, and I'm willing to make it happen. We can go out there and spend a weekend, or even if it's just, like I said, overnight. You go there on a Friday evening, and by after breakfast or midday on a Saturday, you can make your way uptown again.
Cool. Yeah. Well, like I said, thank you again for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
And
I hope that we have, whet the appetites of some of the possible sponsors out there and young persons who may have been tuned in, that we can get them. Right now we are waiting for the authorities to give the green light for groups to open up again. where we can have increased numbers and that kind of stuff. So, but in the meantime, we will continue to do what is necessary, wearing masks, sanitizing, safe distancing, and following all those protocols. So,
yes, awesome. Well, as we also said, we also want to thank all of you out there in social media world, digital world, who's stayed on, throwing your questions and suggestions in the chats from all around the world, the United States, Canada, Dubai, and the like, and so forth. I know some of the time zones are different, and some persons might be up late or the like. But
I want to, if I might encourage those persons to visit the World Organization of the Scout Movement's website as well, which is www.scout.org, and they can see what's happening around the world in their languages in the various regions. So,
okay.
that may show them what is possible for here, because you may have some expertise that you can share with the association here, and
Right.
you can bring that to bear so we can improve the product.
Yes. So that's www.scout or scouts?
Scout.
Scout. Okay.
Yeah. www.scout.org.
Yeah, we'll also put that up on the page and the like. And so, it's producers on the ball. She's so fast.
Yes.
And, so,
and her father was also a scout.
Really knows why.
So we have these friendships that cross boundaries and organizations and everything else, So
Yeah.
some of these things are the best of secrets,
I have the question
to share.
I know Rotary, we had the 4-way test, but I forget what it was in Scouts because I was only there one day. Even though I had friends in Scouts, so I still learned some of the things from Scouts.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't in Scouts.
Well, our promise, a lot of stuff hinges on the promise, duty to God, duty to country, and to self, helping other people. So that is important. And then you have the laws. And if you live the promise and the laws, well on the way to doing what is required and helping the world to be a better place.
Right. Awesome. Well, folks, it's been awesome this evening here with Robert A.F. Adley, I'm going to say A.F. Bartlett. Was the A.F. after A.F. Adley or just?
No, actually, godfathers and uncles, Anthony Franklin. So
Franklin, okay.
So I had godfathers that an uncle is Frank and a grandfather is Frank and a great grandfather was Frank.
Yeah, they couldn't miss. Yeah.
So
my father was
the initials RAF. I had my former boss and chairman of J.S. Johnson, Charles Fernie. He nicknamed me Spitfire because of the RAF fighter planes. So that's the name that stuck as well. One of my email addresses is Spitfire. So
okay, cool. Yes, it's awesome. So what we encourage our guests to do and our person to do is to pause, think about it intentionally, and consider where we go from here. If any of what we have discussed tonight has been of value to you, then we encourage you to get involved with the program on Scout, as we listed already. And also, if you want to, you can also become a friend of something to think about and participate. And maybe we could even find a way that you could get a badge by participating with something to think about, because we all do voluntary stuff here. There's no profit-looking program here. It's all about trying to educate and expose the youth to different things other than the typical routine activities that we have in our society.
It goes to community service. That could be a badge, So.
Okay, cool. And so, by all means, the shows are always up on Facebook and YouTube. So if you missed a portion of it, Brother Hendrik, then you could always go back and listen to the whole thing or the part that you missed earlier by just clicking on the link and watching it thereabouts thereafter, and so forth. And all means share, because there's a lot of people out there who are just searching and looking for knowledge and avenues and opportunities, and they just don't know what exists. And most people are not talking about it. And so we try to talk about these things on something to think about, so that people can be exposed to it. And if they want to, then they can reach out to persons like yourself and get involved with Dr. Off, get involved. So thank you, Robbie. By all means, persons out there in the COVID world, be safe. If it's two things you need to do, we always say is if you're not vaccinated, isolate. And so continue to be safe. And remember that there's only one life to live. Madam Producer, thank you kindly. I know you hard at work in the background there.
Thank you, and goodbye to everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and stay in touch.
Yes. Very much so. Thank you all, and have a good evening.
Good evening.